Hi again then guys, and welcome to, of course, the review to follow on from the tune earlier on today for another one of the vehicles from the 1.28 update. An icon, a car which I believe I predicted would probably come back, at least in some form, the original NSX. It was a very obvious pick. It's up there with stuff like the Supra, the Skyline, the RX-7, and in the racing world stuff like, for instance, the Mazda 787B or the Mercedes Sauber C9, where they're such iconic cars in the franchise that you can make a pretty strong argument for them coming back. So this one isn't really a surprise, I think, to anyone in the community that it did come back, but it's one that potentially has a ton of use. Arguably even more so now than in the past of the franchise. So first of all, why would I say that, and secondly, does it deliver on what I just said? Well, on a slight side note, first of all, you'll notice that in this video I'm actually breaking down the replays into three different modes: replay cam, cockpit cam, and chase cam, which is the first time that we've done that. I had a few people suggesting that kind of thing. Of course, I put a poll up on the channel. The result was overwhelmingly in favour of including the chase cam in videos as well, so of course you guys can see what you think of it here. Now, as far as the reason why I think this car could be even better now than it used to be, as fantastic as it used to be in general, is because of the structure and the nature of GT Sport in terms of the kind of competition. We've said before, of course, with the shift away from performance points and more towards the N classes, the shift away from straight line power and just sheer top speed, and moving more towards cornering and technical circuits and grip and handling, those kind of changes are very, very favourable to certain kinds of car, and certain kinds of car within certain power levels even. This is one such car, because the thing about the NSX is it was basically Japan's answer to a Porsche 911, essentially. Various forms with various equivalents from Porsche. The GT3, you could argue, could go up against an NSX Type R, this one, at least of the time. But of course, when you compare it to something like a Porsche, you expect certain things of it. A pretty high price, pretty high power, pretty high performance, at least in its day. But that's the difference with Japan, because Japan does not make insanely powerful cars, generally speaking. This one, for instance, it's only got 284 horsepower, and that's the top of the tree of the first generation. But the thing that the NSX has always been so good for, in previous games and this one, is what performance and what competitive range it can give you from said power. Because when you detune this car, when you increase the power in previous games or in this game, it's so competitive. Now, of course, earlier on today, that was proven when I did the circuit tune in N200, and it was still a sub 2-minute car on sports soft tyres around Dragon Trail. It's not far off the pace of some N300 cars, and of course it's faster than some of them, depending on the cars that you're talking about, and that's the great thing about them. The NSX has a very obscure quality from a traditional combustion engine, something which I would usually only save for turbines, electric cars and rotaries, and that is that the performance that it has goes way beyond the raw numbers, and VTEC engines in general do actually offer that quite a bit. It's one of arguably the best things about them. It's what allows the Civic Type R to be a legend, despite being no way near the most powerful hot hatch around. The Integra Type R, for instance, I would say is the best front-wheel drive car ever built. Arguable, of course, but definitely one of the best, if not the best. And even this NSX, which is very powerful by VTEC standards and a much larger capacity than typically speaking. It's a 3 litre, and of course would increase to a 3.2 in the later models. But the performance that it gives you, even being in the same ballpark as a Porsche 911 with far less power, it's a testament to how well engineered the car is. And in some ways, the Lexus LFA is kind of the spiritual successor to the NSX, I would say. It's not, of course, from the associated brand, but the way that they had that cost no object financial loss, but completely over-engineered to the point of perfection approach to the NSX is very similar to the LFA. I would say even more so than the new NSX, because the new NSX, as great as it is it's not really an NSX in the traditional sense. It's technically advanced, it's well engineered, it's fast, but it's more like a GTR from Honda in effect, whereas this one, it's pure sports car in the same vein as something like an S2000, or for instance the RX-7 from Mazda, or a Supra from Toyota, but it has the more over-engineered approach of something like a GTR or a Skyline in particular, the R33, R34, that kind of territory. But of course, no all-wheel drive, mid-engine, rear-wheel drive, Porsche level pricing. In the game, for instance, it's almost 100 grand, so it's a huge amount of cash, but what it can do is a testament to the raw ability that the concept of the NSX has, but it's not just great on paper, it can actually deliver on that. Now the weight on the car is fantastic as well. It's actually lighter than a lot of GT style race cars, and even lighter than some rally cars as well, at 1230 kilos. So the horsepower per tonne is actually really good for a car of its power. 231 is very healthy. The torque isn't ridiculous, but again, for a VTEC, pretty good, 225 pound-feet. Of course, the base class is N300, very easy to detune it. You can tune it higher up to around N400. And in terms of the handling and the performance, I would say that I found it to be the most underwhelming car initially of the 1.28 patch, which again, I have mentioned that before over the past week or so, but the reason why I found it underwhelming isn't because it's bad. It's not. It's fantastic. It's really good around the track, great for N200, as I said. The reason why I think I found it a little underwhelming is because pretty much all of the other cars in the pack feel, you could argue, better than they ever have before, at least for the most part. The BMW definitely does, the Porsche old school GT3 compared to the Roof RGT that we had before. Various others in the pack feel more authentic, more accurate, more realistic, and potentially more useful than they used to in the franchise. The difference with the NSX is it was already so OP. For instance, the 2002 shape model for about 120 grand, you could fully tune that car up to about, I think it was 484 horsepower peak in Gran Turismo 6, but from that power, with a flat floor in particular, you could get around the Nordschleife in GT3 or even sometimes GT2 or GT1 car kind of lap times, with the right driver for sure. Extremely OP. You could say completely unrealistic in terms of how good it actually was, but nonetheless it felt appropriate, because why not give the NSX that kind of respect? It certainly deserves it. It's a car which was kind of a commercial failure, but from an engineering point of view, from a performance car point of view, there's a reason why they keep their value. It's an icon, it's a brilliant car, definitely one of the best that Honda has ever made, and although technically speaking the new one is kind of superior in every way, or in most ways, it doesn't feel as special to me. And it may surprise you that I'm actually not a super fan of the NSX. I love it for what it can do. That's always been the case for me. I think that the NSX is a terrific weapon to be used, but it's never been one of my favourites. I'm more of an RX-7 kind of guy. But the NSX is a weapon, and if you get the chance to pick one up, 97 grand is quite a lot. You cannot use it in Blue Moon Bay because it's not expensive enough, ironically, but as a track car, of course it's fantastic. The handling is, as I mentioned in my tune, a little bit more on the side of being tail happy, which is nothing new for an NSX, but it's very easy to control. It feels, I would say, more authentic, which in this case means a little bit slower. That's the ironic thing, and that's why I found it underwhelming. It was so OP before that bringing it down to reality kind of made it feel not as good, which is technically true, but that's the way it should be. And even when it's not as good, it's still great. So again, fantastic car, definitely check it out if you get the chance. And that's it for this pick, so of course I'll see you guys next time, and for now, as always, thanks for watching.